This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I'm gonna give you the 5 best exercises that you can do to bulletproof your shins so that you don't get shin splints. And we're gonna start right now. What's up everybody, it's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com, and if this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in becoming a better athlete, you wanna become a freak of nature and dominate your opponents, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you ring that notification bell so we can help you become a beast. So we've had football players, baseball players, soccer players, lacrosse players come through our doors where they're constantly dealing with a lot of running, and especially throughout the summer, if they're running on hard ground, they tend to be more prone to getting shin splints. We've got to understand, why is this happening, right? When it's hard, when the ground's dry, when we're running on cleats where there's not as much of a padding or there's not as much cushion, we tend to develop a decent amount of stress and compression throughout our shins, right? So we have a lot of stress, and this can be related directly to the bones, okay, the tibia and the fibula, or it's also directly related to your tibialis, to the actual muscle, your gastroc around your entire ankle. And so there's a couple different things that come into play. There's the constant compression on the actual joints, which can lead to inflammation, which can then lead to a whole bunch of stress on the muscle, sort of pulling off of that bone quite a bit. But then there's also a point where that compression can lead to stress fractures or anything along those lines. So we've got to make sure as coaches that we have ways to stabilize and support, you know, our ankle joint, our talus joint, even up into the knee. They're all really interconnected. And so these 5 exercises that we like to utilize are movements that are gonna target different joints from an isolative perspective, but then also movements that we sort of use everything in conjunction synergistically so that we can develop full stability and greater range of motion through our ankle joint. And that's what's gonna lead us into those first 2 key exercises. So those first 2 key exercises are gonna be the tibialis raise and the crouched crawl in a plantar flex position. So the tibialis raise is something that is deceivingly difficult. This is going to be a movement where if we're on a slanted board, we can have our heels elevated and we just raise our toes all the way through that full range of motion. If we're standing on a plate or the end of a platform, anything along these lines where we can allow our foot to sort of drop, our toes to drop, and then we want to raise and dorsiflex that foot all the way back up through that full range of motion, it's really going to target that tibialis, the front part of our shins. That's where a lot of people struggle with full-on muscular coordination, okay? It's not a movement that's trained regularly, and it's a movement that needs to be done in isolation. And that's one big concept here, is that a lot of people will sit there and say, oh, well, you should never isolate a joint, you should never do isolation movements. But we're forgetting those old school bodybuilding principles. We're forgetting that bodybuilders isolate movements, and they also do compound movements. So it's important that we can isolate a muscle, develop that muscle specifically for what it needs to do, for the muscular action that it needs to do when we are doing compound movements or when we are competing in a sport that's an open skilled or closed skilled sport. So now if we can isolate that front part of our shin and we can work through that full range of motion, we're not only going to get stronger there, but it's also going to help us recover, and it's going to help us coordinate when we do a compound movement. And that's why I like to superset this with the crouch crawls that are done in a plantar flex position. So think about you're a little kid and you're sort of sneaking around like a cat, and you're up on those toes, you're up on that forefront of your foot, and that heel is super, super high. And that's what we want to look at. We want to see that plantar flexion position, we want the heel nice and high. When we're doing a dorsiflex position, we want the toes nice and high. And so now we're actually doing these movements together as a warm-up, and we can do, you know, 3 sets of 20 for the dorsiflexion, for the tibialis raise, and then we can do 3 sets of 20 meters on the crouch crawls. And that's really, really going to help strengthen our feet. It's going to help strengthen, when we strengthen our feet, we're going to strengthen that ankle joint through that full range of motion through dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. And then on top of that, we're going to have a little bit more mobility in our knees and our hips. And that's one of those key factors that when we're talking about shin splints, a lot of shin splints do stem from people having very, very tight ankles. So if we can do these specific movements, we can help tremendously. And that's gonna lead us into our next exercise. This is a movement where I like to see the Achilles tendon get nice and long, really, really deep. And when we get deep, I'd like to cue my athletes to have their toes spread, okay? So if we think about our toes being open and spread open, then grabbing, okay? So then we wanna grab, and we wanna think about our thumb being the heel, and our 4 fingers up top, that's gonna be our toes. So if we can think about open, that's how we wanna run. We wanna run with our toes open, because that helps us make more contact, it helps us absorb force more. And if we can train with that heel that lengthens the Achilles tendon and our toes are nice and spread wide, and we go through this full elevated calf raise with that barbell on our back or holding dumbbells, whatever it might be, now we're teaching our body how to recruit through dorsiflexion into plantar flexion, okay? And on top of that, because of the way we're actively spreading our toes, now we're gonna actually improve the way our foot is striking when we're running. And that's gonna lead to greater force absorption, which in theory should help prevent shin splints. So we're gonna increase the mobility through the Achilles tendon. We're gonna increase the strength in the gastroc, which is gonna help support and stabilize that entire joint all the way up into the knee. And then on top of that, we're gonna improve when we're cueing with those wide fingers, with those wide toes. We're gonna improve the way we absorb force and how active our toes are. Those are big factors behind doing the barbell on back calf raise, where our heel is below our toes and we drive all the way up. Make sure that you're focusing on your toes, lengthening that Achilles, and really actively absorbing energy properly as you pull through that entire range of motion. Hey guys, I just got back from coaching my athletes at the Tokyo Games, and this is a perfect opportunity to go deep into today's sponsor for our video, and that's Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators and professionals where you can explore new skills and deepen existing passions. As I continue to make more and more YouTube videos, I'm always looking for greater ways to improve my content specifically for you. I decided to dive deep into Marquez Brownlee's course, YouTube Success, Script, Shoot, and Edit with MKBHD. I learned a lot about how to better script and pre-produce our videos so I don't ramble as much as I used to, and I highly recommend it if you're looking to start a channel. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there's no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow wherever your passions take you. If you were one of the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description below, you will get a 1-month free trial of premium membership Skillshare today and gain full access to their vast library. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring today's video. Now, finally, the last 2 exercises that I like to utilize these are movements that I would use towards the end of a workout as an accessory, or you could, if you have like a very serious issue with shin splints, I would do this at the beginning because they're isometric muscular actions. So we're gonna do a heel elevated, a plantar flexed position in a split, and we're gonna hold that from an isolated perspective, and we can even utilize different movements when we're in that split position. So we want the back heel elevated, we want the front heel elevated. We're gonna really focus on how our knee joint works synergistically with our ankle when we're in a plantar flex position, how we hold that hip flexion position, how our VMO starts to contract when we're in that position, and how our quad and how our hips actually interact with what our plantar flexion is doing, with what our ankle is doing in plantar flexion. So now we're holding a simple position, but we're teaching co-contractions in various joints. And that's a key skill for your body to utilize and learn to prevent injuries, to prevent shin splints. So you can utilize these movements where you get into a split, you hold a plantar flex position. You can do 3 sets of 30 seconds on each side, and that's gonna help you really warm up well. Or if you're doing it at the end of a workout, you could do that. If you have an upper body workout, you can hold that position just to get some extra work on the ankle joint. If you don't want to do that on an upper body day, you can do that on a leg day, and you can still hold dumbbells. You can put a barbell on your back and you can hold that position. And this position, that split with the plantar flexion, is gonna help you with your vertical jump. It's gonna help you with speed. It's gonna help you learn how to utilize your toes together with your calves, so that's gonna help you with speed, okay? And I know a lot of people will be like, oh no, it's just an isometric muscular action. Like, yeah, but this is really important to preventing shin splints. And when we pair this with a bilateral position where we're holding that bilateral position with our heels very elevated, so in a very strong plantar flex position, this is gonna help a lot of linebackers, okay? A lot of linebackers be aware of how they can move. A lot of tennis players be aware of how they can feel their toes reacting quickly. A lot of different sports will benefit tremendously from that second exercise being that bilateral quarter squat with a plantar flex hold. That isometric muscular action in a bilateral position goes a really, really long way, because now you're gonna feel that in both quads, all the way up through your glutes. You can hold your posture more upright. If you wanna add weight, you can use a goblet, you can use a dumbbell and hold that. You can use bands if you would like. You can even hold that bilateral position in an isometric action, and then after you hold that, you can start to squat with those heels elevated, and you're gonna start to feel stronger and healthier in your knee joint because your ankle is more stable. So these are really key concepts. These are unique things that you can do. You can take these exercises to the gym today. In fact, if you're watching in your living room right now, you could do some of these isometric muscular actions right now, and you're gonna feel immediately how it's gonna impact your shins. And again, do these movements, 3 to 4 days a week as warm-ups. Do them once a week as actual strength training targets where you actually want to overload and use progressive overload. But on top of that, if you still have shin splint problems, if you're playing baseball or you're playing soccer or whatever, use turf shoes. If you're playing football, use turf shoes when you're running on really, really hard ground. If you're a distance runner, run barefoot a little bit more out in the grass, and that's gonna help with your shin splints as well. Those are some big key tips that will also help you handle shin splints, but use these 5 exercises over a long period of time, and it's gonna help improve your speed and your overall stability. If you need help with developing speed, with becoming a faster athlete, with becoming dominant on the field, click on the link down below. You can head over to garagestrength.com and you can pick up our How to Get Faster speed training program. If you want more content around specific muscular joints and how to prepare and isolate different muscles so that it can improve your sports performance, click on this card right here. Until next time, guys, peace.